Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar this morning, Accessing a Growing Market, an Early Morning Farmer's Guide to Halal Sheep Meat. So we've got a fantastic group of speakers this morning, Rizwan Khalid, Adnan Malik, Awal Fusini, Tom Gibson and Reese Llewellyn. So firstly, just to say really, NSA at the moment are pushing the Home Office to urgently approve recoverable stun to remove the need for non-stun. Government have recently confirmed that they have been engaging with the National Farmers Union led project looking at protocol which provides assurance for Muslims that sheep subject to electrical stunning are still alive, although unconscious, post-stunning can be classed as halal. The government is currently considering the proposed proposal. However, this webinar is not to talk about stun versus non-stun, but about practical tips for farmers to understand and access the market. So with that in mind, we'll get to the people that are in the know on this. And we're going to start with Awal and Rizwan to speak for sort of 20 minutes around the size of the market, including Europe and the Middle East, impact of religious festivals at key times of year, Muslim values and interests, specification needed, an update on work to agree halal lamb standards. So over to you, Awal and Rizwan. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Dan, for your kind introduction. I'm just gonna start now. Hopefully you can see my slide properly now. So my name is Awal, as Dan said, and I'm here to talk to you about the halal sheep market. So I'll give you an overview of the general market, whether it's the whole of the UK or export opportunities that are out there for farmers and also for abattoir operators and also for meat processors to access. So I've divided the segments of the halal market into three. So the first one I'll be looking at will be the UK market. I'll move on to the EU market and also to markets outside the EU. So in terms of the UK market, it is interesting that Muslims represent only 5% of the general population of the UK. However, this is not the end of the story. Out of this 5%, you can actually break it down. We know that 88% of Muslims in the UK, so the 5%, 88% of them are actually less than 50 years, and only 4% are over 65 years. So what this is telling us is that the Muslim population is a relatively young population, and we know from other studies that they've got a high disposable income and a high propensity to spend. So if you look at the amount of money they spent on food and beverages alone in 2018, it was 4.6 billion pounds that was spent in the UK alone for Muslims. So these are exciting figures that farmers and other people in the agriculture sector need to be aware of. And we know that in 2010, IBLEX published a report which indicated that Muslims in England alone accounted for over 20% of sheep meat consumption in the UK. So that is also another exciting figure. I know it's 2010, so it's been a while now, but we also know from current data from the FSA in terms of throughput numbers that halal slaughter of small ruminants account for, wait for it, up to 70% of slaughter. So this is a market you and I cannot ignore. It is an exciting market, and it's a market that farmers need to be aware of. If we move on to the consumption, if we compare the consumption in the general population with Muslims, HDB's recent published paper that was published last year indicated that 60% of Muslims consume lamb at least once a week, whilst only 66% of the general population will consume lamb once a week. So if I use myself as a Muslim For example, I eat meat almost every day. I eat lamb, mutton almost every day. And it's not that because I have a choice. My wife will cook lamb, whether I want it or not. So I have to eat. So this is telling you about how important lamb is in the within the Muslim community. Then there is an opportunity. If you look at the picture on the left, you realize that this is actually a typical halal butcher shop in London. And what is interesting is that you see lamb tripe, you see lamb heads, you see lamb liver. You don't normally see lamb heads being sold in Tesco's, Asda, or Morrison's. This is a market that presents opportunity for carcass balance. So it is a market that abattoirs need to recognize for the purpose of actually either accessing primal cuts or balancing their carcass with fifth quarter. If we look at the European market, so let's just look at the population or the what happens in Europe. So halal accounts for a huge amount or a sizable amount of the amount of lamb that we export or the amount of sheep meat that we export to Europe. And this is due to a number of reasons. The first is population. As you know, in this market, it's all about numbers. And so Muslim populations, we know in Europe is increasing. In 2016, you may remember that there was exodus of Muslims from mainly Muslim majority countries due to wars, Syria, for instance, coming into Europe. Germany alone took over 1 million Muslim refugees. So the number is increasing in Europe. And there are studies that actually indicate that even if migration stops, if migration of Muslims to Europe was to stop, the growth of Muslims will still increase from the current 4% to around 7%. So that is huge. And the reason why, even if migration stops, numbers will still increase is that Muslims have got a higher fertility rate. I'm not sure whether everybody will agree with me, but yeah, Muslims do have, on average, more than one kid than the average than the general EU population. So these are exciting numbers, as I said, that farmers need to be aware of. We also know that sheep meat is the second most consumed protein within the Muslim community. And one interesting thing I'll touch on later on is, you see, there are some festivals within the Muslim community or Muslim faith that you cannot use, for instance, a chicken to slaughter for those festivals. There is a festival called Qurbani. Some farmers will be aware. If we have abattoir operators with us, they will be aware that the Muslim festivals are important to the lamb sector or the sheep sector in the UK. We also have things like outdooring or naming ceremonies. Naming ceremonies, we call it akika in Islam, where if a child is born, you have to use an animal to name it. So normally around the seventh day, they name the animal, they name the newly born, and you have to use an animal to name it. So these are very exciting festivals that we need to be aware of. On the left are the major importing halal countries. So we've got France, Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Italy. France in particular is huge. It's huge for halal. The Rangis market is a huge destination for halal lamb or mutton from the UK. So in the Middle East, let's look at the Middle East market as well. The Middle East market, we know they only produce on a very small scale. So 90% of their of their lamb is actually imported, mainly from Australia and New Zealand. But we are doing our best. The UK lamb and mutton is getting into the Middle East. We also know that, yeah, so there is appetite for UK lamb in the Middle East. Figures from the HMRC actually indicate that in 2018, we exported 79 tons, which increased to 657 tons in 2020. This is a huge increase. Although it's not large, or it's not very large in terms of the total volume that is exported, but you see that there is an uptick, or there is a huge increase in the volume that is being exported to the region. It forms an important component of their diet for social events and other things. And we know that the population of the region is growing, over 250 million people in 2017, and it's projected that this year it will hit 265. So again, these are exciting numbers. This year, just last week, HDB and HCC were out there showcasing UK lamb. So that is the best we can do to be able to show them the quality of our products. And one interesting thing about that market is that it is a premium market. We know we may not be able to compete with the commodity market, so we have to go for the premium market. So although the volumes are not huge, but there is value in what we are exporting to that region. Also, for those of you who are farmers and also abattoir operators who may want to know the size of the market and the major players in the region, AEDB produced some market intelligence reports for the countries I've just listed on the slide. So let's move on to the key festivals. There are 3 main festivals that farmers need to be aware of. The first one is actually not a festival, but it's a religious observation called Ramadan. Ramadan is a period where Muslims abstain from the consumption of food from dawn to sunset. Now, you may be asking me, why is meat consumption important then? When they break fast in the evening, lamb is very important, or protein is important, because you abstain from eating for 18 to 19 hours. So when you break your fast, there is a huge consumption of food when you break your fast. So that meat is very important during Ramadan, and it takes place for over 29 to 30 days. This year it will be on the 12th. It will start on the 12th, around the 12th till from the 12th of April till the 12th of May. When I say around, the reason is the Islamic month is a lunar calendar. So you cannot just predict exactly when it's going to be. So it depends on the sighting of the moon. And Eid al-Fitr follows Ramadan immediately. So after Ramadan, Eid al-Fitr follows, then Eid al-Adha, which is Qurbani. I've seen that my time is running out, so I'm just going to summarize it. So Qurbani too is very important. ADB recently produced some educational materials. The picture on the left is a booklet we produce. There is also a YouTube video you may want to watch if you want to understand what the market is. As I said, I'm just going to summarize. So in terms of Muslim values, there are 5 pillars of Islam. There is the concept of ihsan, which is very important in the Muslim community or in the Muslim religion. Ihsan is where you strive to do things the way they should be done. So it's very important. It can be related to animal slaughter. So when you are slaughtering animals, you have to do it in the best manner. In terms of the religion, it is family oriented. Muslims do value family ties, and meat is in the blood because meat is highly consumed within the Muslim community. Sorry for taking a bit of Rizvan's time. So I'm going to hand over to Rizvan to start his bit.
Very well.
Hi, thanks, Awal. Yeah, no need to be sorry at all. It means that I don't have to speak as much, which is good. But no, thanks, Dan and Nicola, for inviting me over here. Just for the benefit of those who don't know, my name is Rizvan. I'm MD of Euro Quality Lambs. We're a lamb abattoir based in Craven Arms in Shropshire. So my family's been in the sector since the 70s. We are in Craven Arms since 92. And as Awal has alluded, when we started out, we've always focused on the export market from the inception of our company. Halal wasn't so big a part of that mix. It was more to do with the quality of the British produce going over into Europe. We're roughly 75-80% export. But the last 10 or so years, Halal has become more and more important, both domestically in the UK and also abroad in Europe as well. And there's a number of factors behind that. But one thing I wanted to highlight is that it's very easy when we're discussing the halal market to think of it as one homogeneous market. It is not. A lot of the impacts from the different cultures that Muslims come to impact the cuisines that they are used to or what they cook at home. So as a result of that, for example, for mutton, the primary demand is from the UK Muslims. There isn't any demand really from the French Muslims or the German Muslims or European Muslims in general, mainly because the UK Muslims are from a South Asian diaspora. They're more used to eating goat and those type of meats over there. So mutton fits in quite well with that. The Muslims from France are more North African, Moroccan, Algerian Muslims. They're more used to eating lamb, as are the Muslims from Germany, primarily Turkish, now more Syrian. Again, they're more used to eating lamb than mutton. So for the mutton market, it's predominantly a UK Muslim market. There isn't much demand for it on the continent, but the severe demand for it in the UK means, you know, it's a huge percentage of the mutton market that goes to the halal market. I would estimate 80-90%. It's vastly consumed, and it's a reason that underpins the prices of the mutton market in the UK. Aside from that, when we're selling to the lamb carcasses into Europe, so in Germany, again, because of the Turkish heritage of a lot of the Muslims over there, they prefer a leaner carcass. Generally, most Muslims want low fat. Lean is more important than conformation, because a lot of the way the products is cut, whether it's used in curries or other sort of dishes, they're not using the fat for the flavor so much. There's not as many roasts, so the fat is seen to be trimmed off, and leanness is more important for the traditional meals that they cook. So in Germany, it's very lean. They also associate smaller carcasses with being younger carcasses, because they're looking at tenderness as well. Now, that's not always the case because of the breeds, etc. But there is an association that the smaller the carcass is going to be more tender. So certain communities prefer under 16 kg carcasses as a result. So the Welsh lambs, the Scottish hill lambs, they become more suitable for those markets. When you go into catering for the restaurants, they want chops. So they like the bigger catering type carcasses over there. So there is very much different carcasses for different segments of the community and different segments of the supply chain. And that's one of the beauties of our UK landscape, that we do have the breeds and the types of sheep to be able to meet the different demands. So the takeaway message from a specification perspective is definitely no fat, and they lambs is generally, there's more and more trend towards lambs, because the younger generation like lamb more than the older generation, who are more used to eating the mutton type product. Anand will talk about what the newer generation is looking at in terms of now wanting more English style cuts as well, which is more newer to the Muslim cuisine palette, if you like. But he'll touch upon that. That's in terms of specifications. In terms of standards, there's also been, and Dan touched at the beginning with regards to slaughter standards, the key essence from a halal perspective is that the meat to be consumed has to meet halal criteria. It has to be, from a spiritual perspective, safe to eat. And a lot of that is derived from how the prophets of old used to slaughter. So when you go back to the story of Abraham, how he slaughtered a ram when he was asked to sacrifice his son, how all the prophets used to slaughter it, that's seen purely because that's the way the prophets used to do it, as the gold standard, if you like, of how an animal should be slaughtered. The thinking being that these are men sent by God, sent as mercy to mankind, and so the way that the slaughter cannot inherently be inhumane, because the welfare elements is quite important from the Muslim consumer perspective. So that's the kind of the background of where what the drivers are for in terms of the halal standards. But the other part of this is that because now there are stun methods that don't result in the death of the animal, there's a whole knowledge gap, shall we sort of say, within the Muslim community, because the issue is some stun methods do cause the death of the animal, and that's then confused the issue when you're trying to communicate to Muslims, well, no, this stun method is problematic from a halal perspective, captive wolf stunning being one such method, but these other methods are acceptable from a halal perspective because they don't kill the animal. And in fact, if there's agreement that actually is better for animals, there's actually a case that we should be actually pushing for this more. So there's a bit of a knowledge gap. Aside from the knowledge gap, and Dan alluded to at the beginning, we don't actually have the tools in the UK to assure consumers that the stun method doesn't kill the animal. In New Zealand, they're allowed to stun the animal and allow it to recover, to give the assurance to consumers. We're not allowed to do that over here. So when we're trying to explain to consumers that this doesn't kill the animal, and they want to say, rightly, okay, show us, we say we can't, and they say, well, what have you got to hide? So it becomes a bit of a sort of a cat and mouse type situation. So we need more tools to be able to educate the consumers that in fact this is perfectly compatible with halal. Having said that, though, we do fundamentally believe in the consumer's right to choose the product that they want. And if you look from a purely welfare perspective, the sheep's anatomy means that it actually loses consciousness very quickly after slaughtering without stunning as well. So even though we don't have a problem from a welfare perspective for slaughtering without stunning, we know the risks that there are in cattle and to a certain extent chicken as well. We do realize the sensitivities of this, and so our key aim is to work with the government, work with the NSA, work with LFU, etc., to try to ensure that we have the tools to educate consumers as to how we can meet the standards, and see how we can try to get to a position where there's more common ground between people's understandings. Because some people think that welfare isn't a consideration when it's actually the complete opposite. Welfare is actually really important, but it's just the drivers and what is making people think about welfare in different ways. So I will leave it at that because I want to leave some time for Adnan and then also some time for Q&As at the end as well. Thank you.
Rizvan, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for some brilliant insight. Just to say to everybody, if you're thinking of questions, please put them up so we can move on to questions after. But in the meantime, we'll move on to Adnan now, who's discussed the next generation of Muslims and demand for high quality meat and digital marketing. So welcome, Adnan. Thank you very much.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I'm Adnan Malik, and I own a halal artisan butchers in Wolverhampton. And I'll be talking to you a little bit about the trends that we've spotted in the halal marketplace and how we at Malik Butchers are currently at the forefront of these. So as a third generation butcher, I've been actively involved in the meat game for around 12 years. But the changes that I've seen in the last 2 or 3 years have been the most drastic. There's a desire for customers to move away from the traditional halal butchery, and this, I believe, is due to the following 3 reasons. So first of all, the new generation of Muslims, they have a lot more disposable income. The younger generations tend to be more affluent and more willing to part with their money. The halal market used to be driven by price and price alone, but now we're seeing a shift towards more quality-driven purchasing choices. The second point is the evolving eating habits of the halal market. This new generation are more adventurous with the foods that they're willing to try. Previously, there was a big focus on chicken and mutton, having it skinned and chopped and just made for curries. This no longer satisfies the palate of these younger Muslims. And what we're looking to do, we're looking to replicate British, French, and even American dishes at home. We've been heavily influenced by TV programs in the past few years, particularly the Food Network, with shows such as Diners, Drive-In, Dives, and Man vs. Food, showing us what levels can be achieved with meat, especially red meat. The popularity of beef burgers, barbecue brisket, and steaks is at an all-time high now. And the third reason we believe there's a change is something that we've coined ourselves is the Dubai effect. Now, this is probably the biggest and most prevalent factor with the shift in trends for the newer generation. The influencer effect on social media has elevated the likes of Salt Bay with his Nusrat restaurants, and they specialize in lamb and beef products as a breathtaking centerpieces. With the advent of the high quality smartphone, a key part of eating in and dining at home is the food picture. The quality of the dish and presentation is now of utmost importance, and food is now seen as a status symbol. Now, due to all these factors, my butchers has responded to market trends, and we're shifting more towards quality red meat products. We sell a lot more lamb than before. With customers, they're now recognizing the difference with the quality of lamb and the tenderness from its tougher mutton counterpart. They also are now learning how lamb should be cooked for certain Western dishes, and this has seen a huge upturn in sales. Mutton has also seen a resurgence and is quite a trendy meat at the moment. It's on many street food menus. We ourselves, we have a street food stall outside, and with our burgers, we offer mutton loaded fries, and the customers just can't get enough of it. We've also introduced products that mirror our non-halal counterparts. So items such as French trimmed rack of lamb, they're increasing in popularity due to, you know, the visual pleasing nature of these. We've also spent a lot of time preparing our own lamb roasting joints, as you can see from the slides. We do stuffed lamb saddle, and the ease of preparation and the cooking and the carving makes this hugely popular choice for young professionals and couples within the halal consumer market. As mentioned earlier, the prevalence of social media platforms such as Instagram and Facebook is a huge influencing factor for the next generation of halal consumers. As a business, we've identified these platforms as a marketing tool for us, which we can seek to leverage at every opportunity. We regularly post photos and videos on our page to showcase new and available products for that week. The response is almost instant. We get customers coming in to store on that day looking to buy that very product. We are now in the process of adding an online delivery option as well, so that we can take full advantage of these impulse-based ordering. We also promote the idea of our customers sharing photos of their food creations at home, or the food that they purchase from our deli or our street food stall, and then they tag our page in so that their friends and network can see where the products come from. This is super effective, as rather than us marketing continuously to our existing customer base, we are now getting customers to market the produce to their networks with their family and friends. And as we all know, in business, a referral or recommendation is one of the best ways of bringing in new customers. And on that note, I think I'm done.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Adnan. Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? That I was invited to it was actually a Mongolian restaurant in London, which introduced me to lamb dishes that I never even dreamt existed. It's stunning what could be done. But thank you very much. So we're going to move on then to an update from the devolved nations on how this information related to each of their nations. So we'll go first to Rhys Llewellyn, Market Development Manager for HCC for Welsh Update.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So thanks for the opportunity to talk this morning, and I've been told I've got 2 minutes, so I won't hold back. So HCC has been actively pursuing the halal market, especially as part of our export strategy for a number of years. So for 10 years or more, we've been active in the Middle East. And I think over the last year we saw 1,000% increase, or over 1,000% increase in sales of Welsh lamb in the Middle East in general. I think we've been so successful there that I know that I think the year before last, Awal and Phil Hadley and some of the other guys from AHDB actually went to the Middle East to see what we were doing to try and emulate some of the success that we're having. From my point of view, you mentioned striving for Ishan, the way things should be done, Awal. Then copying the Welsh is obviously the way to do it. So, no, just joking aside, from our point of view, I think it is a very, very important for us market for us. 70% or so of our lamb is slaughtered using a certified halal process. So that shows how seriously we do take it. We have tended to focus on export for halal, though it hasn't been a big focus for our marketing in the UK. But that is something that we're looking to address at the moment. And it's really good to see the work that Adnan is doing. And I'd like to have a conversation with you, Adnan, about some of the developments that you're seeing, especially with the sort of what we would term the millennial Muslims and the younger consumers. This is definitely a market that we're looking to work with. But I think Rizwan also mentioned a knowledge gap, and I think that this is a key area that needs addressing from both sides. So when we did a bit of social listening a couple of years ago into attitudes towards halal slaughter, we found 2 distinct groups. So first of all, it was the Muslims talking about the importance of halal, but also it was the extreme far right factions in the UK talking about barbaric processes and so on. And having worked in the industry and knowing the industry, we know that as you said, the animal welfare is probably at the top of the halal process. So education needs to happen on both sides. The non-Muslim population need to learn that there is nothing barbaric about a halal slaughter process. But also, I think the Muslim population need to understand that it might not be just a matter of animal welfare that we're looking to stun animals before slaughter, but also in terms of health and safety in abattoirs. If you're looking at abattoirs that are pushing in 5,000 to 7,000 lambs a day through slaughter lines, then that stunning is for the safety of the workers there as much as anything. And I think any work we can do to get acceptance of standards, which include a stunning element, be that a recoverable stun, I've got no issue with that. But I think that is absolutely key. And getting over this confusion that exists in the market, I think is the way forward. From my point of view, and Awal was very supportive of me some years ago when we had issues with halal certification, with different countries in the Middle East accepting or not accepting different standards for halal slaughter. And it caused, it meant the trade to the Middle East from a lot of the Welsh abattoirs just ceased overnight. And the fact that you've got so many certification bodies and standards does add to this confusion, and I think that we need to be working together to standardize the certification process, so everybody has that clear line of sight. The transparency is there. That would clear the knowledge gap between the non-Muslim community and the Muslim community about what constitutes halal, and also help us to create a product that is acceptable by the Muslim community, which at the end of the day is a key part of what we're trying to do. So I'll leave it there. I've probably gone over my 2 minutes. I usually do. So I'll hand over to Tom quickly.
Thank you, Rhys, and good morning, everyone. And again, thank you very much for the invite to come and speak to you this morning. I'm just going to be very brief and give you what we take as Scotland's piece in the whole halal supply chain. And a little bit of background behind that. In Scotland, we have 6 main sheep abattoirs. 3 of them actually process 90% of the product for Scottish supermarkets. So the vast majority in terms of abattoir capacity in Scotland is focused on supplying Scotch lamb to our retail supermarkets. And that's about 1 million sheep per year, or lambs per year, that get processed to that market. But in the same token, we also have about 50%, about 1 million as well, product going south. So we have about 1 million lambs going south for processing into the halal market as well. And we reckon probably about 70% of that product is going into the halal market. And so I think in terms of halal, you probably won't see a lot of it in terms of Scotch branded in Scotland, but a big part of our lamb production goes into the halal market in England and Wales for processing. And that would be a lot of it through auction and a lot of direct contact and supply chain with the farmers. So we play a small part in the halal market, but more on the supply chain side rather than doing the processing side. We have 1 or 2 processors that do a little bit of halal processing, but nothing in the grand scheme of things. So the vast majority of production supply chain takes the product down south to be processed in England and Wales. So that's really where we fit in, Dan.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't get to introduce you there, Tom, but Tom's the Director of Market Development for QMS in Scotland. So thank you very much, Tom, for that update. So I think that's fantastic insight into the workings of the industry, really, and that's outside of the industry. But Rizvan, I wonder if you'd come in on that bit about the market's share. So obviously we're under threat in regards to stunning. If, for example, New Zealand lamb was able to supply a market, what percentage would we lose if we lost out to other where stunning is allowed?
Yeah, I think that it all depends on how things are implemented. I'm not in favor of bans, because bans actually get people's backs up, and you then drive them towards importing products from elsewhere. I'm more interested in engagement, because one of the things the Muslim community is frustrated about is this perception that they don't care about welfare, which is absolutely not the truth. I can show you books that have been written by scholars about the importance of welfare. It's just that their perspective or perception of welfare in terms of what's best for the animal is different. And it's about how do we engage the community to see what's their concerns, perceived or actual, from the wider community, what's the concerns perceived or actual from the Muslim community, and how do we bring communities together? Because I think there is a win-win solution here in terms of trying to address these knowledge gaps and trying to address misunderstandings between communities as well. Because if we have perceptions as to what's driving the other people, so some Muslims think that it's the far right only that's driving this agenda because they jump on it as a way of marginalizing the minorities, then that gets people's backs up and say that, well, we're going to defend it even more as a position rather than actually going through the understanding of what people have got legitimate concerns about. So I do think it's important that these things are done gradually with active engagement. At the moment, there's been a more hands-off engagement. Maybe people don't know how to navigate it, but I'm a strong believer we need to get around the table more and more so people understand where each other is coming from and see how we can navigate together to a roadmap that will allow for the concerns of each of the communities. The one thing I will add, and it's not relevant to our sector, but the stunning issue is more problematic in chickens and in beef. It's not problematic in sheep, but because it's more problematic in chickens and in beef, there is issues around stunning generally when the end consumers don't really understand how the stunning methods affect the different species. If we had a stunning set of stunning tools that we know work across all species, that then becomes easier to convince people that actually stunning can meet the criteria. But we do have an issue cross species, which indirectly then affects the perception of stunning for the sheep sector itself. So there's a few different points there, but I do think there's a roadmap together that can mean that we don't lose market, but it does need to be navigated carefully.
Yeah, I think that sort of very much what you were covering. I think, Reese, wasn't it, that we just need to get that acceptance of standards across the board. I don't know if you wanted to come back on that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, a set of standards that everybody can understand, that are transparent, and that are acceptable to everyone. I think that is what we need, and it would help the industry move forward, you know, in a positive way. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Now, question for AWOL, please. The presence at Gulf Food is great, but why did the stand say quality lamb from Britain and not say quality halal lamb from Britain? It's from Anthony Goodyear.
Can you repeat your question, Dan, please?
Sorry, so the question is, the presence at Gulf Food is great, but what did the stand, or why did the stand say quality lamb from Britain and not state it was quality halal lamb from Britain?
Yeah, well, that market, the Dubai market, Reese is well informed about this as well. Before you export any products there, the product needs to hold a halal certification. So anything that is marketed there, you wouldn't call it halal. That is because that would be tautology. That we just say lamb. So lamb will make more sense than halal lamb, because before you can get anything out there, that product would have been halal. So they obviously know whatever we will send there will be halal. That's why we just said lamb, quality lamb from Britain.
Yeah, there'd be a full acceptance and expectation that the product would be halal, so you wouldn't need to spell it out.
Absolutely, yeah.
Can I come in there slightly as well, Dan? Sorry, because when you go to these markets, we do see Australia have got an Australian halal brand, New Zealand have got a New Zealand halal brand, Britain haven't got a British halal, if you like, story. We've told about the individual halal certifiers that we have, but we don't talk about the Muslim communities over here, the depth of the experience we have in serving the halal customers in the UK and in Europe, getting that confidence and that story across to the wider markets, whether it's in the Middle East and in fact the Muslim communities in Canada and in US as well. There is an opportunity for us to develop a British halal offering, if you like, that will resonate with other halal consumers around the world. And that's what New Zealand and Australia have been doing for years to develop the image of halal in those communities. So just a quick point to mention there.
Thank you. There's a question here to both Adnan and Rizwan. Suggests that mutton is less favoured by younger Muslim consumers. Do they see this as leading to a marketable surplus at some stage? If so, do they have a solution for selling this product going forward? That's from Yamadou. Rizwan, Adnan?
Adnan, do you want to come in about mutton for younger consumers?
Yeah, with mutton's always going to be one of those things that we purchase. It's part and parcel of a good curry is always with mutton. What we're seeing the trends on is they want better quality lamb. Like I said, the market's always been driven by price. It's been price and price alone. So mutton will always sell in the Asian subcontinent because a curry is better made with mutton. Lamb, it takes longer for lamb to absorb the flavors. And with mutton, you've got that cooking time. With lamb, you haven't got the cooking time. So I don't see there as a problem or a conflict of interest or a big, massive surplus. Our mutton consumption's going to continue the way it's continuing. It's probably going to grow. What we're now seeing is our lamb consumption's growing and the need for better quality lamb. So Rizwan touched on earlier on in his talk about certain types of animals and carcasses for the Muslim consumer. What we've noticed is that we want the better quality ones now because we're involved in these cuts, rolling lamb legs and stuff like that, roasting joints. We don't want the lean stuff that's traditionally been pushed on the halal consumer. They're looking for big lamb with nice fat coverage. So things like lamb chops. We're consuming so many lamb chops, and there's a greater need for the bigger lamb chops, and that comes off a bigger animal. So in essence, I don't feel that it's going to affect it anyway. There won't be a surplus. Well, I don't believe there will. Rizvan?
Yeah, no, I agree with that because the Muslim community is growing and is consuming more. It's not that mutton will decrease per se. It's just that there'll be more purchases of the other higher end lamb. But the other thing with mutton as well is that there is opportunities for mutton in whether it's some sort of burgers or how Adnan has his loaded fries, other types of products. So there will always be a demand in the UK in the halal sector for mutton. I've no doubt about that.
And Rizvan, from a comment you made earlier, do you see people looking for specific breeds? Is there interest around different breeds from different regions?
That is starting, Dan. It's still too small for us to really push as a marketing drive, but we are starting to get a few questions here or there.
Can I? Sorry, Rizvan.
Yeah, go on, Adam.
That's something that I'm really onto. So I'm at the front of this. I'm at the forefront of all this halal revolution. The breed thing is something that I'm actively going to start pursuing in the next couple of months once I've got everything set up here. We want the story. We want to be told the same story that our English consumers or the non-halal consumers are told. This is your farmer. This is where it's come from. This is the breed. We're not getting that. And so although it's small in number now, it's there, it's growing, and it's going to get bigger. And I want that from my personal now. I want to know what breed we're using. I want to know the only breed we are aware of and I might be a bit naive, is the Texel breed, or that's considered the quality, the de facto lamb breed. There's no other knowledge of anything else. We don't know. And if we don't know something, we can't buy it. So it's something that's going towards that way.
I think exactly, Dan, on that, there is a knowledge gap between the Muslim butchers and what their awareness of the breeds are out there. And whilst you answer that question, the thought going through my mind is that actually we need to arrange visits by Muslim butchers to the NSA events so they get a better understanding over the breadth and the depth of the breeds that exist out there, so they can start to market that better to their end consumers. So that's something that maybe we can work on offline.
Well, I think we'd definitely be happy to work with you on that. And I wonder, Tom and Reese, whether you'd come in there and just see if you see opportunities to work with that market.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the message that we, also the underlying brand messages that we push for Welsh Lamb, are the same for all consumers. We do target our communications to different demographics, but the underlying messages would be the same, and it is one of sustainable production, high standards, traditional breeds and traditional methods, and a high quality product. So I think I'm making notes here furiously while these guys are talking, and it's giving me a lot of ideas in terms of work that we need to do to engage more with the halal market. So it's definitely an area that we need to do more work in. It's something that we have been involved in, but maybe not putting as much attention into it as we could. As I said previously, the halal focus for us has been on export in the past, and it would make sense for us to look closer to home.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, it's a difficult one for us in Scotland, Dan, because of the way the EU PGIs are set up. So Wales, with the Welsh lamb PGI, they can slaughter out with Wales. For our Scotch lamb PGI to carry that brand, our marketing brand, the lambs have to be slaughtered in Scotland. So by default now, anything that goes south for halal processing, which is the vast majority of it, we can't really then market as Scotch lamb. So that gives us a bit of a difficulty how we take that through into that marketplace.
Thank you. And I wonder if you comment on, has the AHDB done any work in building a brand, a British brand for halal, or has that not been looked at?
Not that. Awal, do you want to take that?
Yeah. So thank you very much again, Dan. So when I joined AHDB just in 2017, and prior to that, my colleague Phil Hadley was the driving force in some of the developmental work in halal. I think since 2006, AHDB has been very active in this market, trying to develop both the domestic and the export market. We have had social influences from the Muslim community showcase lamb to the Muslim consumer. We've had workings with ethnic channels like Islam channel, where we interact with consumers through social influences. So we've done a bit. And in the export market, I know Reese mentioned that we were around. It's definitely not to compete or not to step on the toes of the Welsh, but but to develop a brand for British lamb. So we have been active both in developing the domestic and the social and the export market.
Thank you. I'm going to take a question to Adnan, please. And can you explain quality in the eyes of the modern halal consumer? Does it include sustainability, environment, welfare, as well as eating quality and presentation?
Yeah, quality, as we touched on before, the quality is now changing now. With the welfare side of it, this is of utmost importance. I'm getting requested, is it organic, is it free range? I know it's off subject, but free range chicken, which we would have never sold in our butchers at £15 a pop, never in a million years would have sold it. And that's selling, and it's not only selling to the newer age consumer, it's selling to the older consumer as well. And it goes for all around. We want a better quality. We feel disillusioned by our butchers. You know, a lot of consumers, their quality is on all aspects, not only quality of the meat, quality of how it's been raised, how it's been slaughtered. This is of utmost importance to the new Muslim consumer, and you'd be pleasantly surprised to hear to even the older generation. You know, they are reluctant to buy those now big chickens that, and I keep referring to chicken because chicken is where we see the most of it. Those big chickens that are, you know, the pumped full of water. The free range chicken has taken a big space on our meat counter now, and we can't get it quick enough. So I think the main problem here is it's education, and the butchers that we have, they aren't British born like me. Most of the butchers we have are from the immigrants from the Asian subcontinent, and they don't have an understanding of this. You'll go very hard pushed to find British born butchers, and that's where it is. Which kid wants to grow up to be a butcher? You know, I didn't want to be a butcher, even though my father was. We didn't want to be butchers. We want to sit in offices and do things and drive fast cars. They don't see it as a profitable business. And the British born Muslims that are in the meat industry, like Rizvan, they tend to go into a higher level. So the consumer's only being dealt with by people who can just about speak English, and they don't have a grasp on what's going on in the market. That's why we're getting the response that we're getting. And quality is at the front of all of this. They're demanding quality, and they're demanding traceability, and they're demanding all these things that we never heard of in the halal sector. All we had heard was, is it fresh? Is it cheap? Is it fresh? Is it cheap? And that was it. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd like to think that's happening across the board as well in all types of meat, that people are just asking more questions and more aware, particularly, of course, environmentally now as well. I just wonder if you wanted to comment, possibly Rizvan and the regions, on the price currently and how sustainable they think that is. Obviously, with the issues with Brexit and going over the water, whether that market can be upheld. And Rizvan, you've probably got a bit of experience with getting things over the water, so you might come in first on that.
Yeah, it's I mean, we touched upon this time before we sort of went live, but it's extremely difficult for exporters at the moment. I mean, in our company, we work 5 days a week, and we hardly ever take days off. But since January, we've only been working 4 days, which is unprecedented for us. With the euro rate, with the livestock prices, with the difficulty in getting the trucks over, and just, I mean, I don't want to make this a Brexit conversation, but the way that our trucks are going over at the moment, we're estimating for our company, between us and the importers, to incur an additional £500,000 worth of costs on the export certificates, on the customs declarations, on the administration, the import veterinary, the border changes, etc. So there's a significant cost element, there's a significant delay because our products are getting over there 1 day later. And there are times of the year when we lose money, but you make that up for the rest of the year. But there are very rarely times when both we're losing money and our customers consistently are losing money. We're in that time at the moment, which is unprecedented. So I don't know what's going to happen, because we've never experienced this before. The driver of the prices seems to be purely UK retailers. They seem to want the stocks filled at whatever price, which I suppose from a farmer perspective is good, but it seems to be more about filling the shelves rather than actually any true profit at that end, because even they're not selling it at the prices they need at the retail end to make it financially work. How this is going to end up is anyone's guess, but it is for us unprecedented.
Tom, would you like just to come in and see how you see the sales and promotion of lamb going forward?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, Dan, in terms of how COVID and lockdown has affected the retail market for UK. Pretty much across the board, sales are up 20%. Butchers have been doing a great job with lockdown and the lack of food service. And, the really interesting thing for me is in the past couple of months, we've seen an upturn in consumption and purchasing of lamb. So we were especially in Scotland, we were in a downward spiral for lamb purchasing and had been for a while. But certainly in the last sort of 3-4 months, lamb has taken quite a big upturn in terms of retail purchases. So I think that's the sort of positive to take out of that discussion. But I totally agree with Rizvan in terms of the pricing that's out there. Some of the supermarket pricing, we've had processors tell us that supermarkets are actually selling product on shelves at a lower price than they're actually the processors are selling into them. So, it's a footfall driver. It's the main driver for a basket still in terms of protein and red meat. So that's why supermarkets, I would think, are still going down that route. So it's a difficult one to judge how it's going to work out and how it's going to play out. But certainly the big thing that we have been driving is recipe inspiration and people cooking at home and different cuts of lamb and how we push that as much as possible. So we're certainly seeing that coming through and paying some dividends, as well as people being more interested in home cooking because of lockdown. So hopefully we've turned the corner in terms of lamb consumption and we're back on the way up rather than the downward spiral that we were on. So let's try and take the positive out of that one.
Reece, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I'd agree with Tom there. We've seen lamb sales growing significantly, and we do hope that the fact that people have had more time to cook and maybe are getting back to understanding what they're cooking is of benefit to us. So, and what we've seen as well is, obviously when the food service sector disappeared overnight and people were actually going back into shopping themselves, the independent butcher sector did well because people actually wanted to know where their product came from, and the retail sector did well, especially the retail sector where where provenance was key. So people were actually wanting to purchase British product, Welsh product, Scottish product. And this has been a great boon for us, and maybe it's something that we need to be aware of when the food service sector does reopen, that we need more clear and transparent labeling on where product comes from in that sector, and whether Brexit plays a role in that as well, with people looking to support British farmers at the time when they need that help. So it is a positive picture for us for lamb sales at the moment. Sustaining that is going to be the challenge moving forward, but we are putting plans in place to sustain all our sales across all our channels, be that in the independent butcher sector, the multiple retail sector, and also when the food service sector does start to kick off again. We hope to be able to see some good positive growth in that sector as well.
Lovely, thank you, Reece. A question here for Halal. With it currently not viable for most processors to export into the Middle East with levy bodies, will levy bodies be looking to help contribute towards the cost? I'll put that on to you as your levy body representative, Halal.
Yeah, well, at the minute, is a question saying it's not possible to export to the Middle East? Is that what?
With it not viable, not that it's not possible, not viable.
Sorry, I don't understand the question. Can you just
basically they can do it, but there's no money in them doing it. They would lose money to do so.
You mean the exporters, is it?
Yeah. With it currently not viable for most processors to export into the Middle East, will levy bodies be looking to help contribute towards the cost?
Well, that is a question that is above my paycheck. So I think it's something I'll need to seek. But there are so many ways we assisting exporters, but it depends on to what extent the person is asking the question. Not cash, but there are so many ways we facilitating it. We've got an agent who was recently appointed in the region to help exporters. So this agent has really identified major importers in the region, and I work very closely with them. I have been able to put them in touch with exporters. So instead of exporters traveling there in and out to find the right buyers, we have been able to facilitate that. So I think that is one area we are investing money into. Yeah,
I think that's probably where it's coming from. I don't suppose anybody expects cash payments, but it's nice to know work's being done to promote and spend in those areas. But a question here towards Rizvan, I think, in Adnan. With current DEFRA consultation on gene editing in mind, what would the Muslim view on this type of technology be?
Yeah, I saw that presentation, the webinar last week, which is quite interesting. It's one for scholars, to be honest, because from a religious perspective, it's about the question is about, are you altering God's creation in effect, which genetic modification is. Gene editing is a bit different to that, in that you're not actually you're not introducing the new genes into the product. However, it's not one that I can say with any level of confidence. It's something that the scholars need to have a look at. And with any of these new types, from a religious perspective, or any new technologies, scholars need to be kind of involved in the process, into the thing behind it, to then give a verdict as to what the issues might be from a religious perspective. So I think there's potential, but I can't comment at the moment unless there has to be clear kind of benefit and risks sort of analysis around it. I think we might have more problems from a consumer. That's from a technical, is it religiously acceptable or not perspective. But I think you'll have more challenges from a consumer perspective. That do I want something that's gene edited? And as an industry, from a consumer perspective, I'm not sure we need to go down that route. But it's things are always worth exploring to see if there is anything there. But yeah.
Yeah. Howard, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I think that needs a lot of discussions with scholars. I recently had a chat with one of the large certification bodies in the UK, and I was asking him what their opinion is on that. They said they still need a lot of information on that to be able to discuss with their scholars to see whether it's something they can progress on. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's a few things. Obviously, we're concerned from that aspect, and also the effect in Europe, because the Europeans never allowed that, which is why we're now looking at it post-Brexit. So there's sort of concerns for us on a few levels there, but obviously some hugely interesting advancements could be made, particularly in welfare again. So I sort of feel like we've sort of covered it fairly well there. Thank you, and taking everybody's time. So really, I'd just like to say thank you very much for everybody involvement today, giving us an insight into this this whole thing. I have got a comment here, just in line with the devolved nations, from Ian Stevenson, as we've got no coverage from them today, which just states halal wouldn't be as big an issue for Northern Ireland, so I'm happy that the devolved perspective from Wales and Scotland should suffice on this occasion. So not much to add, but that was their comment. So yeah, so thank you very much, Rizwan, Adnan, Reese, Tom, Howell, and obviously Nicola for the great work. And just to add, this is our last weekly webinar, and we're going on now to a monthly basis, which will be the first Wednesday of each month. So please keep an eye out for upcoming webinars, and the first one, as I say, the first Wednesday of the month. So again, thank you very much everybody for your input. It's been fantastic. I hope to see you again all soon. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Yes, thanks a lot.